In this video, we're going to look at how to find the scatter plot and the correlation coefficient in Microsoft Excel. The first way will be pretty quick, and then the second way will be using the equation for the correlation coefficient. First thing you need to do is copy the data and load it into Microsoft Excel. I've already done that, kind of have something set up here. To create the scatter plot, it's pretty quick. Just highlight your data, go to Insert, and then Scatter, and just choose the top left one, and then there we have our scatter plot. Now if we look at this plot and the answer, you can see that this one goes from 0 to 3.5, but these go up to 4, 10 and stuff. This is the correct answer. If we open it up, it goes up to 4, and ours looks like that, but we can adjust this if we'd like just by double clicking these values, and then we can change the minimum 0, that's fine. The maximum, let's make it 4, and then let's make the units go up by 1 unit at a time. And when we close it, now my graph here looks very much like this graph here. You can match the numbers up in the locations. You can also change these units if you need to as well. Okay, so that's how to quickly make a scatter plot. Now let's go look at the correlation coefficient. That's pretty quick as well. Just go ahead and select the box where you want it to be calculated. Go up here to Formulas, More Functions, and then go down to Statistical, highlight that, and then you're going to come down and see that you have Correl. That means correlation coefficient. So select that. In array 1 will be your explanatory variable, your x values. Select those. In array 2 will be your y values, your second set. And then click OK. And then you can round this off to however many decimal places that you want. But there's our correlation coefficient. And you can see that the answer is matched here, 9828. So we want 4 decimal places, round off to 4 decimal places. So that's pretty quick. Now if you'd like, you can stop there if that works, or you can continue watching for how to use the equation of the correlation coefficient in Excel. In the rest of this video, we're going to continue with the same problem, but we're going to use the formula for the correlation coefficient and calculate it in Excel. This will take some time. I will explain everything before I start with it though. So I'm going to copy this data and put it into Excel. Okay, here's the same data. Now this is the formula for the correlation coefficient. We need to compute this. So if you look at it, it says that we need the input minus the sample mean divided by the standard deviation of the x value, and we need the y value is the same thing divided by that, and then we need to multiply them together. That's what this is doing. See, this times this, and then sum all those. So it's very important to understand what this is actually saying. You do everything in parentheses first, multiply, and then sum them all up. Okay? And then divide all that by n minus 1. So we're going to do it piece by piece. I'm going to find out this information here, which is going to be right here. Take the x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation of x. Then I'm going to do that for the y's. Okay, that's this one. And then I'm going to have these columns all completely filled, and then we're going to multiply them together because that's what you have to do before you sum. You multiply them together and then you sum it up. And then this box will be this whole numerator. You want to build these things piece by piece, but you need to do the correct order of operations. Then for me just to find the correlation coefficient, I'm going to divide by n minus 1, which we'll have right here when I'm done. However, we need the standard deviation of the x and of the y. That's another whole calculation back from earlier. You take the input minus the mean and you square that and you sum those squares. So I have to do that again. So here are the differences, and then you square them, and then I'm going to sum them up for the x's because I need the standard deviation of x. This is the sample standard deviation. I do the same thing for the y's. I'm going to subtract them, and then I'm going to sum them up. And then that's going value is going to be there. So when you do these functions in Excel, you got to pick them apart and do them piece by piece. And now this thing can be reused just by inserting more cells here, right? Just by inserting a few more cells and then pasting them in there, I can reuse all this data. Okay, now let's get started slowly. Make sure we do the right thing. I want to do n minus 1 first just because it's basically easy. So I'm just going to count. You can count them by self. You can fill this in yourself if you want, but I'm going to do a count. It just counts if something is in there. So if the cell has something in there, and they do, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so there's 5. But I want minus 1, so I'm going to subtract 1 from it. So count all the cells in minus 1, that will be n minus 1, which is 4. So no matter if I insert cells in there, this will always update, as long as I have something in the cell. If I go like this and say, if I insert a blank cell, it's not going to update. Okay, it has to have a number in there, and then it will update. But let's undo that. Back to normal. All right, that's done. Let's calculate the mean. Excel has a function for that. It's just called the average, or the mean of these. It would just basically, if you want to, you add them up and divide by how many there are. Let's calculate the mean for here, which is the average. Add them up and divide by how many there are. Okay, those are done. Now let's work on the standard deviation portion, but we need to get these two values done first. So now we have to go up here and figure out this value here, which are the differences of the x value minus the mean, x mean, and then square it. So here's what we'll do. We'll hit equals. We'll choose this value here, subtract the mean to the second power, and then we'll go back in here on this B9 because I want to drag this box down. I don't want to, sit there and retype this. So I'm going to put a $ in the B9 box. And the reason why I do that is so that it forever points towards this box, this green box. Okay? Then I hit enter. Now it has calculated this value here. And you can see that the $ is here in the B9 and B2. So when I pull it down like this, each of these boxes here, the B3 will go up, B4, B5, B6, but B9 stays pointing at this box. No matter if I click one of those, it shows this one on top or first minus this one. Okay, that's very important to have that $. Otherwise, this will increment 1 unit as well. It'll go down, down, down. Now we do the same here, except with the y values. Let's see, the y value minus the y mean. Got to be careful, you know what you're doing. You don't want to be tired. Enter the $ again so that when I pull this down, I'm going to center those. Okay. Now we have these values, and now we need to go continue down and just sum them up. So equals the sum of these values equals the sum of these values. Okay. Now we're close because we're trying to create the standard deviation for the x values and the y values. So let's put a box around there and maybe a box around this one just so that I have it complete. And the standard deviation for the x would be this sum here divided by n minus 1. Well, I've got the n minus 1, so it's pretty easy. We write square root, right? Square root. Oops, sorry, I didn't put my equal sign. You can see that the function didn't come up. Square root, there we go, of the numerator divided by the denominator. Oops, something happened there. Square root of the numerator, oh, this is, I got to click the right box, divided by the denominator, which is n minus 1. All right, so that takes the square root of it all because I had the parentheses there, hit enter, and then that's the standard deviation. We can round that off to whatever we want. Let's do it for the y. Equals the square root of this guy here, so right here, divided by the n minus 1. Hit enter. And that's the standard deviation for the y values. Okay, so we just need to fill out the rest of this, and then we can get this information to find the linear to find the correlation coefficient. To find the correlation coefficient. Okay. Okay, let's do this now. X1 minus X bar divided by the standard deviation. Here we go. Equals the numerator, so I got to put it in parentheses. When you have more than one item being added or subtracted in a fraction, you got to put the numerator or denominator in parentheses, so it calculates that first. Minus X bar divided by, see, I had to have that, do that first, now divided by the standard deviation. Okay, so before I hit enter, I need some certain things to be always pointing. I need to always point to the green one, X bar. I always need to point to the standard deviation, and I want this one to move as I go down. So $sign again on this, $sign again on this, hit enter. And now I pull down, and then I go through and I make sure that it did it. These two stayed. The X bar stayed and the standard deviation, yes, and this increased. You always want to check. Let's do that for this one. Equals, just like it's typed. I need parentheses around the numerator because that fraction. So I go through here, subtract the y bar divided by the standard deviation y. Before I hit enter, $sign, $sign. Drag that down. Now we're going to find the product. That's pretty easy. Just take this one times this one. And I don't need any $signs or anything because I want them to step down. I want this to go, as I pull it down, I want them to move. So look at that. These two are there. These two are there. These two are there. They step down. Finally, I want to sum them up. Okay. There it is. This is the last thing we want to get. So let's go back to here. It's just this value, which I have right here, divided by n minus 1. No problem. Equals this value divided by n minus 1. Done. 0.982823. And if we go back here, 0.982823. That's the answer. Right there. Now you can tell that this took quite a while and it's very tedious and complicated and you can make a very easy mistake. So you got to be focused. You got to double check everything. But once you have this made, if they said, hey, I want you to enter another data. So I go in here and enter another data and all I have to do is enter the X and Y. 9, let's go 9, 2.5. There we go. Now it filled it all in and everything updated. This updated and everything updated for me. And I can paste new data into here and it will update for me as well. So that's what's super nice about this. You don't ever delete this stuff. You just can insert new cells into it or copy and paste over this and all the information will update. And you immediately have your standard deviations, you have your means, everything is right there. Hope this explained a few questions that you had and how to do the correlation coefficient on Excel.